Hello and welcome to GSF Podcast, sponsored by the Gary Sinise Foundation's Education and Outreach Initiative, aiming to educate the public on the importance of serving America's veterans, first responders, and their families.
Welcome to the Gary Sinise Foundation Podcast. I'm your host, Cristin and today I am joined by retired 4-star General and Vice Chairman of the Gary Sinise Foundation Board of Directors, Vince Brooks. General Brooks has a remarkable career that took him from star student at West Point to commanding our U.S. forces in South Korea. He has led troops in dynamic and challenging environments and has been pivotal in shaping military policy and diplomacy. General Brooks is one of the most respected leaders in our ranks of our military and in international affairs. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Cristin.
Sir, I have loved our conversations in the past, and you have quite the fascinating family history. And you're kind of your family's genealogist in a way. So can you share with our listeners a bit about your own family history?
Ooh. Well,
I know
there's an awful lot here.
I know, it's like this, we could talk about this the entire show.
Yeah, I'm telling you. I'll just start by saying I'm tail end Charlie.
Tail end Charlie.
Yeah, that's an expression for the one who's the last one catching up.
Okay.
And so I'm in many ways, I'm just trying to keep up with a great family story and a great family history. I come from a military family. Mm-hmm. So my father served a full career, just short of 30 years in the U.S. Army and retired as an Army general. My brother preceded me at West Point. Well, it apparently does.
Apparently
I guess it's something in the water.
There's something there.
It's my mother, I think. My mother was the one who was absolutely in charge. So. Mm-hmm. My brother also became an Army general, and then me. So as it turns out, we're history makers.
Yeah.
We're not trying to do that on purpose, but just trying to live up to the family standard. And so I'm the third general in our immediate family.
Holy smokes!
And among African Americans, there's only one family in U.S. history that's done that.
Only one.
Only one.
And look at you all.
We don't want to be the last.
No, yeah.
It's okay to be the first, but not okay to be the last.
Exactly.
So you want it to keep going.
You're paving the way.
Well, we've been blessed, without a doubt.
Yeah.
But a long history, strong family, goes in multiple directions, and we're able to track part of it way, way back to the 1600s, which is also very unusual.
Wow.
Yeah.
All the way back to
the 1600s. Yeah.
So you can see all the levels to you.
Yes.
My goodness.
Yeah, there's some cloudy marks inside of there. You know, the impact of slavery makes it very difficult to track a clean line. But we've got some before and some shades of the during and the clarity from what comes after it. Been able to discover a lot more about my Brooks line, oddly enough. I knew it went back to my great-grandfather, but I didn't really get it much further than that. I've gone now 4 generations before that as well.
Oh, wow.
And so now I've discovered the answer to the question I often get asked, where are you from?
Exactly.
And as a military kid, you know, who gets to answer that one correctly? Mm-hmm. So I used to have fun saying, well, I was born in Alaska, but not really from Alaska. I lived in a lot of places. But now I really know I'm actually a Virginian.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my roots are absolutely in every direction in Virginia, Northern Virginia.
Holy smokes. So you looked at the line and it's right there.
It's deeper than I thought it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know
it's
that.
been fun.
I know that feeling of where are you from, and I'm like, oh dear, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
My dad being in Air Force, I'm like, I always just say all over.
Yes, all over. What do you mean all over? Like, where were you born? Okay, here we go.
Yeah. And then I'm like, well, I was only there for 3 months,
Yeah.
so now let's go through this again. Yeah. Okay. What inspired you, or who inspired you to join the military? Because it's a history.
I'll give the credit to my brother.
Okay, not your dad.
Not my father. And oddly enough, I was probably more rebellious about going in the military during that time.
You?
Me.
Get out.
Oh, yeah.
I do not believe it.
I'm second child. What do you expect?
Okay, middle children. I get it.
Yeah, middle child. But the career I wanted to pursue was medicine.
Really?
I was going to be a doctor.
I could see
sure. For, since about 6th or 7th grade and on. Had a copy of Gray's Anatomy, the book, with all the tables of the human anatomy.
Yes, not the TV show.
Exactly, not TV show. I'm too old for that. Although I do watch it.
It's a good one.
But the study of the human body is something I'd always been focused on.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until really my junior year in high school that I decided that maybe I want to be a doctor in the Army. So I was starting to warm up to the Army a little bit. Mm-hmm. Then my brother gets accepted to West Point a year before me. Now I'm in my senior year. He comes home after the first 6 months. And I love that cadet gray uniform.
Uh-huh.
And he was different. He was a pretty sharp guy already, but he was different.
Yeah.
And it was suddenly, I think that's what I want. Now I'm in my senior year.
Yeah.
You need to apply to an academy starting your sophomore year of high school, then focus on it in your junior year, and then go through the competitive process in your senior year. I was way late.
I mean, that is way late. You were thinking your senior year. Oh, yeah.
It was way late because I just had a shift. I'd already been accepted to multiple schools for pre-med, ROTC. I was going to probably think about being an Army officer and an Army doctor. So pre-medicine, ROTC, basketball was the combination that I was looking for.
Wow.
And finally realized that maybe I really want to go to this West Point place. I want to try it. And so I applied. And thankfully, my brother was courageous enough to go speak to the head basketball coach, Coach Mike Krzyzewski. Little known name in college basketball, only the winningest college basketball coach ever, but this was in his early years. And he recruited me as an athlete. And so I was able to accelerate part of the process. I had to have all the prerequisites done already. So, I was academically solid.
You were already
I was
strong.
Leadership solid. I was athletically solid. I had all those other things. I was just late applying.
Oh, man.
And so we had 2 different applications that were running in parallel. One of them came back saying, "We're sorry, you have not been accepted to join the West Point class of 1980, entering in July of 1976. And my heart was broken because by that point in time, that's where I wanted to go. This is May of my senior year.
Oh.
And then a week later, I got another letter. Congratulations, you've been accepted. So 2 parallel applications. And one of them worked, one didn't.
Oh, my goodness.
I don't know which one wasn't, but I didn't look back. I just kept running from there.
And that was it. You were accepted.
Yes. So that's really what my inspiration was.
Really? So him in the uniform. It's always the uniform.
That did it. It did it. It was different.
What was the difference, do you think?
His poise, I think it was. Mm-hmm. Which is not to say he didn't have it already. I mean, this is an Iron Man at the school and tailback on the football team. So he was a pretty impressive guy already.
Yeah.
But there was something more that I saw when he came back from West Point.
And being his brother, you could see it.
And probably there's a bit of second child syndrome that caused me to want to go where he went.
And surpass it.
It happened eventually.
I am not surprised.
I was just trying to keep up.
I am not surprised. So West Point is perhaps the most famous military academy. I mean, depends on who you ask. And they have...
If you ask anyone who knows, they don't answer the question.
If you want to be clarified, it is. And so they have a meager, 12% acceptance. You expressed a little bit about the application process, but what is it really like? I mean, you said starting sophomore year, so that's 3 years.
You need to start in your sophomore year in your preparatory activities. And then you concentrate in your junior year, and then you go through the rest of the process in your senior year. And it is highly competitive. So it's all these different categories of aptitude. Mm-hmm. Are you academically solid, as I mentioned before? Do you have athletic skill? Okay. Every cadet's going to be an athlete one way or another. Every single cadet participates in athletic activities. Every one. And the physical aspects of being an officer in the Army demand that. Mm. Okay, so you have to be at least rudimentarily athletic.
Yeah.
But many of the applicants are captains of multiple teams, multiple lettered sports, class presidents, valedictorians, National Honor Society. I mean, it's the top talent in the United States.
Wow.
Okay, and that's who's applying, and that's who you're competing against. So it's an extraordinary process, and they try to select a cluster of about 1,000 people a given year, 1,000.
My
roughly,
goodness.
Who get accepted and enter into the academy.
4.0 isn't your goal. Like you need like
It wasn't good enough.
Exactly.
That was one of the shocking experiences I had at West Point, because I was strong academically in high school. When I got there, so was everybody else.
Yeah.
Okay, and so I'm suddenly, actually, it caused me to stop playing basketball after my first year. I was on the varsity team, but I realized I was falling behind academically. I wasn't ever used to getting grades like that, and it's because of how they, grade the talent.
Yeah.
At that time at West Point, every single course had an evaluated event in class every single day. So you got graded every single day in every single class. And your position in class, your physical position in class, like are you sitting in the first seat in the room or the last seat in the room? Is it the first room or the 12th room? That was a function of exactly where you were in class. So you would literally change and have a different instructor the next day if you had a good test or a bad test.
That's incredible.
Now that had since changed.
So it's a competition.
It's extraordinarily competitive at the time.
You know at every moment where
every single day.
Whoa.
And when you had the big tests, they post the results.
Wait, publicly?
Yeah, publicly. Yeah. You literally find out what your test results were by standing in a passageway, a sally port, and look at the wall and see what the computer printout said. Look for your name. Okay, I'm proficient.
No anonymity. Everybody.
No. Now, it was done by cadet number. So there was some degree of anonymity. You didn't know exactly who the person was.
Got it.
But that then impacted your class standing thereafter. So
that's incredible.
It's changed since then, and it's progressed quite a bit more. In fact, the result of an honor scandal happened the year before I got there.
Okay.
So now there's still competitive activity, to be sure.
Absolutely.
It's an extremely strong academic environment, but much broader than it was when I was a cadet, and a much better education when it's all said and done.
What advice would you give to any of our listeners who are thinking about, or have maybe a family or a friend who's thinking about applying to West Point?
If you can get into the junior summer program, it is a game changer. So in the end of junior year, students are allowed to come up, a few select students are allowed to come up and live a short experience at West Point.
Like a little
By the way, the other
like
academies do this too. It's a little tease of it. And that's a game changer for most people who go up there. A lot of people have heard about it, but not everyone has physically experienced it. And each one of the academies is in a different location, a completely different type of environment. All of them are beautiful. All three of them are breathtaking. And if you would add the Coast Guard and Merchant Marine as well, but Naval Academy, Air Force Academy, and U.S. Military Academy at West Point are all in gorgeous, historic places.
Oh, yeah.
But when you sit up there on the Hudson Hills and you look at the bend in the Hudson River, and people tell you this is the longest garrisoned post that the United States Army has, and you realize that the Army is older than the nation, that post, the posting of West Point being used for the U.S. military, is older than the United States.
Man.
Continuously. And so the history is just oozing from the rocks.
Oh, yeah.
From Benedict Arnold's betrayal to, I could go on and on about West Point. I won't do that. But I would encourage people to try to get into that program and experience it firsthand if they can for a period of time. Talk to graduates. There are West Point societies in virtually every city. You probably know someone in your family. If you just ask around, someone knows someone who's a graduate, and talk to them about it.
And they're open to share.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I will say that
Won't be all horror stories. There's actually a lot of good news stories.
Yeah. There's power in hearing about the actual reality, because you can kind of think about what it's like, even for myself. I remember watching a documentary on Marine Corps boot camp and being like, okay, I've got this. And then you go and you're like,
not quite everything you told me. And then a few more things that you didn't tell me.
Exactly. So while a cadet, you were appointed West Point's first African-American first captain. So can you share with our listeners, what is a first captain?
Yeah, it comes from an old title.
Okay.
So the
everything's
the
history.
first captain's an old title.
Okay.
And it was the lead cadet captain.
Okay.
So that's someone who's going to be in charge of a group of cadets.
Mm-hmm.
The lead cadet captain in the Corps of Cadets in a sequence of units.
Okay.
All right, so it was the first unit, the person in charge of the first unit.
Mm-hmm.
Was called the first captain. Over time, that emerged into a role that was overseeing all units. So the 4,000 plus cadets that are at West Point, there's a cadet chain of command.
Mm-hmm.
So cadets are given leadership responsibilities for their peers, essentially. I mean, they're all peers when you
Right.
think about it, but it doesn't feel like it. There's a very definite
yeah.
hierarchy between the seniors, the juniors, the sophomore, and the freshmen.
Mm-hmm.
And there are, of course, names for each one of those firsties, cows, yearlings, plebes.
Wait, can you
It's
go
part of the
cows?
culture. It's part of the culture.
Is that juniors?
Yeah, those are
Okay.
juniors. There's a story behind every one of those.
I was thinking firsties
take me forever to
were
talk
freshmen,
to.
but then when you said the
No,
other was like,
firsties as in first class.
first class.
Cadets.
Got it. Okay.
So now the role of the first captain is the cadet brigade commander or first captain.
Mm-hmm.
So the ancient title is used as well as the modern description. And that cadet has responsibility over all of the 4,000 plus cadets who are there. Working with a military chain of command also. So they're tactical officers like, Gary Sinise's brother-in-law,
Mm-hmm.
Mac Harris, who I knew. And we'll probably talk about that at some
We
point.
are,
but
yes.
he was a tactical officer overseeing one group of 36, there's 36 different companies. He was overseeing one group of them as the officer leader and giving guidance and support and development to the cadet leaders of that. So 36 of those grouped into 4 regiments, 4 clusters of units. All 4 of those then fall underneath the one cadet, the first captain or brigade commander. So that was a role I held.
Isn't that interesting? I mean, from the very beginning, they saw incredible leadership in you.
Somebody saw something. I don't know what it was. No, they absolutely saw some talent. West Point does a really good job of that, of identifying talent. So I think about the people who were in leadership positions. My brother was one of them, and so he was one of the regimental commanders the year before me. It's a leadership laboratory.
Yeah.
So it's a great place to evaluate the foundational aspects of leadership as well as the pinnacle aspects of leadership. Are you able to lead your peers? Can you solve problems? How do you react when you get bad news? What kind of example do you set for others? Your own personal conduct is a really important part of your leadership.
That is, I like the leadership laboratory.
It is.
That is perfectly said.
Without a doubt.
It's not really a college. They're creating leaders.
We call it the uncollege.
The uncollege.
It's the uncollege. No, it's clearly a college. I mean, it's an academic institution that produces some of the world's best scholars. I mean, the number of Rhodes Scholars that come out of West Point is amazing. Just amazing. So the scholarship is extraordinary there, but it's more than that.
Right.
It's a whole lot more than that.
It is so much more than they're preparing you to be leaders of the military. What did it mean to you to hold that position? I mean, that's a big position.
It is a big position. It's interesting. I've shared this story with others, but because I'm second child and tail end Charlie, just trying to keep up. My brother had been a regimental commander, and the regiment that I was in, so he was the commander in front of my 1,000 or so cadets. I wanted to do what he was doing. So I said, when I was told I was going to be the first captain, I was told that by the commandant of cadets, the 1-star general in charge of the military program for West Point cadets. I said, "Sir, I'm honored, but can I be the 4th regimental commander instead?"
Get out.
And so, in other words, would you demote me?
Would you
demote
drop
me? Because
this
that's
down
what I
a
really want to
notch?
do. And I think back on that now, and
That is so funny.
it probably is because it didn't occur to me that I could possibly be the first captain.
Why is that?
I think just the pedestal that you put that position, that person on, it's like, you got to be kidding me.
Oh.
And then he was very kind to say to me, he was a gentleman without doubt, because he could have been really cruel and merciless, but what he did instead, with a great sense of humor, he kind of looked at me and smiled and said, "No, you're going to be the first captain."
Oh.
And so later, the superintendent, the 3-star general who was in charge of the academy, I asked him about it. I said, would cause you to choose me? And he says basically that the West Point chooses well on this, and we have confidence in you. We've observed you for several years, and there's a lot of observation as I described, and you're the one that we want to lead the Corps Cadets. And so it was humbling, deeply humbling, and a really important experience, a foundational experience on what happens when you get selected to stand in front of your contemporaries. You're chosen before them. Do you do it with humility? Do you do it with a sense of gratitude, or do you do it with a sense of hubris? Do you think it's because you're so much better than everybody else? Or do you think it's because you're fortunate to have been chosen among everyone else? And I tried to follow that second pattern for the rest of my career.
Yeah, it kind of seemed to trickle in through your entire career there. Did you face any challenges?
Oh yeah, there were some.
Yeah? How did you navigate those?
To try to maintain confidence that West Point made the choice, and now it's up to me to deliver. And when you hear the voices that suggest that you shouldn't be there, or that it was some other reason other than your merit that caused you to be there, you just work through that. Just work through it, ignore it, and wait for more feedback that says, no, we appreciate you and we're following your lead.
Yeah.
Leadership's all about the led. And if you're being followed, then you are in a position to lead. But if you're not being followed, then you're not leading. And so I could feel followership occurring when I was a cadet brigade commander, first captain.
You had left an impression on many.
Well, I had many impressions left on me. I mean, I was literally trying to live up the example of those who had come before me, all of whom I knew in the 4 years that I was there, the 3 previous years.
Was that where your mentorship came from?
Not directly, because they're now all out as lieutenants in the Army, so I didn't have direct contact with them, but their example is what stayed with me. And for those that I did get to know, the one who was a year before me, I knew really well, John Cook. He was my brother's classmate. I got to know him very well and see his example as he was leading. I just couldn't imagine myself being like John Cook. But each one of them, and I've met several since then. There'd been quite a line of distinguished leaders who had been chosen for that position. And so when the press release goes out, it says, Brooks, first African-American to be chosen to hold a position held by Douglas MacArthur and Robert E. Lee and Jonathan Wainwright and William Westmoreland. And those are the names that they tended to pop up. There were a whole lot more names than that. Many, many more names than that were really distinguished leaders after they left West Point, and were also distinguished leaders when they were at West Point.
And you're on that list.
It was an incredible, humbling honor.
To be the first. You're oftentimes it's against the grain in a way, but it's, and you're not the last.
Well, it was a historic year.
Yeah.
That was the year that West Point, for the first time, had women in all 4 classes. My class is the one that women came into West Point with, entering in 1976, the class in 1980. Very proud of the women who graduated my class. They went through a lot. And now I was selected to lead the class. So it's one more piece of history added to an already historic class.
Yeah. Just paving the way for everybody else. When you graduate West Point, you graduate as, for our listeners who don't know, like a second lieutenant. You graduate as an officer.
Yes.
You graduate as essentially a leader. And then you enter the essential, broader military. What is that transition like?
It can be abrupt for some people.
That's what I would think so.
Something as simple as this. Every day you're surrounded by officers, and there's generals that are on the post, and there's colonels, and there's lieutenant colonels, and captains everywhere, and you can't shake a stick without hitting a captain somewhere. And when you get out there in the force, it's rare to run into a captain. Your world is much smaller when you're out in your first company, and there's one captain in the company, one. And maybe 3 to 5 lieutenants of varying degrees, second lieutenant, first lieutenant. And that's it for the officers. Whereas at West Point, you're surrounded by officers.
They're everywhere.
And so you have to get accustomed to being at a different station in life in many ways. And for some graduates, that's difficult.
Yeah.
At the same time, it prepares you. You're not as intimidated by it when you run to a major or a lieutenant colonel. So, I think that it prepares you very, very well for a longer run in military leadership, inside of that military leadership culture. than in some cases where you're just now getting exposed to what the military culture is all about.
Yeah. And so then you spent the next 4 decades in service. And so that's how many duty stations? Like 20? How many is that? I mean, you're changing duty stations, what, every 2 years?
Roughly. Sometimes
maybe
every
more
year.
every year.
Sometimes every year.
Depends on where you're being sent and
Yes.
where you're needed. And so you were all over the map. Can you take us through kind of where you were? I mean, that might be the whole, maybe the rest of the podcast, which I'm.
It's 4 decades. Are you sure you want me to answer this question?
Let's open this can of worms.
I'll try to go quickly. So,
one breath. No, I'm
West
joking.
Point, I went to the 82nd Airborne Division. Was a paratrooper, a young paratrooper officer there. From there, I went to Germany during the Cold War in the Big Red 1, 1st Infantry Division. From there, I came back to the States, was an assignment officer in Washington, D.C., making assignments and pulling captains like me away from troops. That was a popular job. Then I went off to Staff College at Fort Leavenworth. From there, I went to the 1st Cavalry Division at what was then Fort Hood, Texas. So now another continental U.S. assignment. From there, I went to the Pentagon, was in the Army headquarters, did 3 or 4 different jobs inside of there because I couldn't keep a job. And then after...
They just wanted you everywhere.
Well, I was fortunate to get exposed to a lot of very interesting things, including being the aide de camp to the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, so the number 2 in the Army.
Oh, wow.
So to see how that 4-star leader worked every single day. By the way, for a short period of time, my brother was the aide to the Chief of Staff of the Army.
The competition
and we
continues.
Overlapped. So we had about 2 months where we had both Lieutenant Colonel Brooks's. One was the aide to the 4-star Chief of Staff of the Army. One was the aide to the 4-star Vice Chief of Staff of the Army.
The confusion, I'm sure, that you both created.
It was fun to play on that. We actually
sure.
did have to mess with some people's minds
Good.
on that on purpose. Left there, went to Korea, and commanded an infantry battalion there, the 2nd of the 9th Infantry, Manchu, in the 2nd Infantry Division up close to the DMZ. From there, off to a War College fellowship at Harvard University. After that, I actually got pulled away to do a couple of things for combat operations that were beginning in Europe and other places. Then went to be the lead planner at 3rd Army, based in Georgia, but living in the Middle East. So I was in and out of the Middle East in 1999 and early 2000, trying to set conditions for what would come in the next decade as a plans officer. So really trying to see the future and put some things into place there. It was a fascinating experience. From there, I went into commanding a brigade. So second time in my life I was a brigade commander, except this time I really actually had some authority. And had about 4,500 troops. We deployed them to Kosovo. I was in Kosovo when 9/11 happened. That was with the 3rd Infantry Division, the 1st Brigade, the Raider Brigade. After that, I got selected for Brigadier General and was immediately posted into the Pentagon. Spent 2 years in the Joint Staff, so in the nation's senior-most military staff. Had 3 different positions while I was there. Again, couldn't hold a job, including in the middle of it being pulled out of the Joint Staff because combat operations were going to begin in Iraq, and suddenly found myself at U.S. Central Command Headquarters as a operations spokesperson. So I was the one talking about the operations of the coalition every day in front of the world.
Wow.
Literally, like walking a tightrope in front of the world every single day. Returned to the Pentagon, thought I was going back off to troops, which is what I wanted more than anything else. I was told, not so fast. We need you to come over to the Army staff now.
Wow.
And do a couple more years as the Chief of Public Affairs. So I served as the Chief of Public Affairs in the Army.
You did too good
of
a job.
It was about a 4-year run when it was all said and done in the Pentagon, and then finally went out to troops and stayed there. Back to the 1st Cavalry Division, into Baghdad during the height of the surge. Then had a short period of time commanding the 1st Cav when we got home. Mm-hmm. Left that position, was the deputy commander of 3rd U.S. Corps at also at Fort Cavazos, Fort Hood, Texas, as it was at the time. So now, the number 2 for a very large corps that had multiple combat divisions underneath of it. left that and took command of another combat division, the 1st Infantry Division. So now I'm starting to come back around to units for the second time. The 1st Infantry Division.
They're just sprinkling you.
Fort Riley, Kansas. Deployed them back to Iraq. So back in Iraq again, leading those troops, great troops in combat. And then from there to 3rd Army, returned to 3rd Army again. So I'm starting to touch multiple points that I'd seen early in my career, this time as the commander of 3rd Army, as a 3-star general responsible for the Middle East and all of Central Asia, all Army activities that are happening there. Then selected for a promotion to 4-star and off to U.S. Army Pacific, which has the responsibility for all Army activities from the west coast of the United States to the west coast of India and from the Antarctic to the Arctic. So Hollywood to Bollywood. Penguins to polar bears and everything in between. 52% of the world's surface. And
how is that? How was your reaction to that?
Well, when I heard that first, it's like, that's good. I'm going to hold on to that one.
I'm going to remember that one forever. Pocket that one.
Absolutely. And then my final assignment was after that was to Korea. So a smaller geographic location, but a much more complex command when it's all said and done. It was all services, Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps, special operations, American and South Korean, and any UN nations that still had troops participating there. Fascinating position.
You were everywhere. You were just...
Couldn't keep a job.
No, it sounds like you were just neat. They saw such value. They were like, we need to just keep you in all different locations just to imprint on them and help
I was fortunate. I had a lot of different experiences. I touched 88 different militaries around the world.
88.
And got to see a lot.
Is there a duty station or experience that stands out the most?
All of them. I get asked that question. That one I can't answer, right? I can only come up with highlights from each one of them. Being in command is the greatest thrill for any leader, in my opinion. And that's where you have enough responsibility to really make an impact in the lives of your people. And yet enough seniority to be able to chart a course for an organization, a collective entity, forging cultures and moving them in the right direction. Every one of those assignments was just extraordinary.
Yeah.
It just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And when it was all said and done.
They saw that you could handle the responsibility.
Or let's see when he falls off.
Yeah, right. We're just going to watch this.
Did well on this one. Try this one. See what you think about it.
Sounds like you pretty much succeeded all over.
Well, I was blessed the whole way, without a doubt.
What does being a general mean to you?
Well, I ascribe to a concept we call servant leadership. That means that you're essentially, each one of these positions as a general means that you're responsible for something large, some large part of an enterprise, and everything that happens inside of it, but especially for the people inside of it. And so it means that you're given a large swath, of responsibility and opportunity to impact the lives of others.
Yeah.
And that lives depend on what you do. Policies are shaped by what you sense is required. Executions occur, things that need to be executed, done, are driven through you. It's the role of being a shield for your organization so that they can focus on their mission when things get noisy around them or things get chaotic or policies are uncertain. So each one of those means it's just a larger and larger role to fulfill. So a 1-star general has a larger portfolio than a colonel. A 2-star general is an even larger one. 3-star general even larger. And it tends to 3-star tend to be either in key staff positions like the principal staff officers in the joint staff or in the service staffs, the Army staff, the Navy headquarters, etc. 4-star generals are like viceroys. They are given large pieces of the globe to be responsible for. And unlike our time in World War II, we did have 4-star generals and 5-star generals in the last 2 years of the war. The number of areas where we're committed now throughout the world is very unlike the World War II era. It's much more significant now. We have a global responsibility now in the U.S. military that we did not have then.
Right.
We had kind of a 2 regional responsibility. Big parts of the world, to be sure.
Oh, yeah.
But it's now the whole world that we engage ourselves in. That's a matter of policy that could change,
Mm-hmm.
but certainly up to this point in time, U.S. leadership has been important.
Mm-hmm.
And 4 stars are the ones who are given the responsibility, the authority, the privilege of representing America and overseeing the activities of America's sons and daughters as they do their work in other parts of the world.
Mm-hmm. I like the way that you use the word, they get the privilege. It's not just about essentially power.
Yeah.
You are responsible for lives.
This is where it's so different from what Hollywood portrays.
Exactly.
It's so different. The method that the military uses to select leaders
Mm-hmm.
weeds out megalomaniacs.
Right.
They're
okay.
long gone. They're not in the top ranks of the military. You have people who have repetitively demonstrated character,
Exactly.
who have repetitively made, more often than not, the right call in
Mhm.
ambiguous circumstances,
Mm-hmm.
and who recognize the word privilege of being able to serve others.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's a lot of responsibility that comes along with that. But it is definitely, there is power, but it's not about power.
Exactly.
You have the power to make a meaningful impact in the lives of others. You have the power to help keep people alive by making the right calls.
Mhm.
You have the power of representing the United States to others abroad. That's power,
Mm-hmm.
not the power to lord over people.
Right.
Those are not the leaders we have in the U.S. military.
I perfectly said. I love that, because I think that what people see is just very different.
Mhm.
And they don't really have that internal perspective. And so I also wanted to ask you, I think that often people don't understand our presence internationally.
Yes.
And so when it comes to our presence in different countries, are we defending the United States, or are we defending our allies? How does that actually work?
I'm going to use a metaphorical
Okay.
response first. For a long time, there were things like neighborhood watch. Whose house are you protecting? Whose family are you protecting when you engage in a neighborhood watch?
Right.
And the answer is yours
Everyone.
and others,
Exactly.
because you, as in a collective sense,
Mm-hmm.
are protecting one another. The
Mhm.
same applies to military service and our commitments abroad.
Yeah.
We're protecting our neighborhood. We're trying to shape the neighborhood so that we can live free
Correct.
in our country, in our neighborhood, in our city, in our homes.
Mm-hmm.
We protect the American way of life. We protect the ability to provide ourselves and others the opportunity to make free choices,
Right.
liberty, and these kinds of concepts that the foundation stands for. The foundation supports those who represent these things.
Mm-hmm.
They're defending all of us. They're defending lots of different things. They're defending the values of the United States of America.
Yeah. It's not, again, about power. It's about, I like that. I like that neighborhood watch. That's good. So, okay, looking forward, what do you see as the greatest challenges and opportunities of the U.S. military?
Yeah, it's a challenging time right now, to be sure. What is the role of the United States in the world?
Mm-hmm.
It's a fair question that ought to often be debated
Mm-hmm.
by the U.S. body politic. Should we be engaged around the world? And if so, doing what?
Right.
Some say we don't need to be the world's policeman. Well, the Gary Sinise Foundation, we support first responders and defenders of all sorts.
Mm-hmm.
And policemen are important to us.
Absolutely.
Somebody's got to be the policeman.
Exactly.
Now, it doesn't have to be us. It doesn't have to be the United States. Somebody needs to do it. It doesn't take care of itself. Who has the wherewithal to do that? The sufficient base of treasure, the talented pool of people, the prestige and authority. For my way of thinking, the United States cannot be excluded from that.
Right.
Cannot and should not be excluded from that. But it's worthy of debate.
Mm-hmm.
If we choose that we have a place in the world and that we've earned our place in the world and that we covet holding our place in the world, then what kind of world do we want to then shape? So I think one of the biggest challenges that awaits the U.S. military is to see where they're going to be committed and for what purpose. To be sure, our troops don't get to decide where they're going. Okay, they go where their nation sends them.
Exactly.
So whether that's to Vietnam or whether it's to Baghdad, it isn't the call of those who serve. They serve because you and I serve because we want to be part of something bigger than ourselves, and we accepted the burden in many cases of the sacrifices that come from military service. That you don't get to call where you're going to go. You don't get to decide when you're going to go.
Nope.
You don't get to decide how long you're going to be there.
Nope.
You don't get to decide whether it's dangerous or not dangerous, whether it's cushy, whether it's hot, cold, frozen, wet. You don't decide any of that.
None
you
of it.
accept it as part of putting on the cloth of the nation.
Yep.
And our military will rise to the occasion wherever they're sent. I have no doubt, absolutely no doubt, that wherever we're told to go, whether it's staying in the homeland or operating in some foreign place, what we will export is professionalism. I used to use that term in my command in Hawaii, that's what we do. When we're out there touching those 88 different militaries that I encountered, our people export professionalism. They are the exemplars for the world. Every military admires the U.S. military. And we ought to admire them too. That's what the foundation does. We admire those who serve, who accept that mantle of responsibility.
Yeah, that is beautifully said. We admire them and they admire us. I think that having that perspective is something that you wouldn't think of, unless you've experienced it. So what advice would you give to someone who is new to leadership?
1, focus on the lead.
Perfect.
I mean, it's that simple.
That simple.
Focus on the people you're responsible for leading. So we start with leadership as one other person. You have to start with leading yourself.
Okay.
You lead yourself every day in terms of what you decide to stand up for and what disciplines you exact upon yourself. Do you brush your teeth every day? Do you comb your hair? I mean, these are simple disciplines, but you impose that on yourself. You have to lead yourself through the daily challenges of life.
Starts within.
It starts within. Then if you're given the privilege of having someone else to join with you in trying to accomplish some purpose together, then you have the opportunity to lead or be led. All it takes is 2 people in that case. If you're given responsibility for even more, while new to leadership, the responsibility is still the same. Each person that is being led should be led individually. It's easy for a leader to go, well, this is just how we do it, so just kind of fall in.
Right.
This is where we're going to go. And there is a degree of that that's important. But when you're really leading somebody, you have to find where they are. And experienced leaders know that. Inexperienced leaders are learning that. And sometimes they learn it the hard way, that they didn't connect with somebody, they lost somebody. And it's probably because you were leading in I'll call it a universal way instead of a precise individual way.
Like institutional. This is just the
this
way.
is how we do it.
Right.
So just
Get
do
in
it
line.
and it's not a problem.
Yep.
But when you're leading someone, you want to inspire them to go with you in whatever it is that you've undertaken, been told to undertake, your mission. And inspiration comes from a personal connection. So someone has to see you and view in your leadership that you're worthy of following. To me, that's the ultimate definition of a leader.
I love that it's the people. It's not the mission. That's not, it's truly the...
Responsibility is the mission.
That is...
Leadership is about the people.
The people.
Someone must follow.
What advice would you then give to someone who's having challenges in that position, civilian or military or otherwise?
Go to the mirror. Go to the mirror and look at that person who's staying there, who's having difficulty. And ask that person why. And get inside. Go inside once again, because whatever difficulty you're having, you're at least part of it. You're part of it.
Yeah.
And so what could you do differently to connect to that individual that you're having problems with? What is missing in that person's life? What can you find within you that can help to illuminate the way for that person who's stuck in the darkness? So start with the mirror. And then once you've had an honest conversation with yourself about what you are or are not doing, are you the kind of leader that you would want to be led by? Is that who you're looking at in the mirror? And if you are, then then keep doing that if you have the right aspirations for what your leader should have been. Be that leader then. Go away from the mirror now, deliver that to somebody. Be the leader that you wanted to have. Give it a try. Now, that may not be a match. You might still have some problems. That might not be the leader that person needs. The one you wanted to have may not be the one that person needs. And that's when you connect with them on an individual level. Simple conversations can go a long way. One of the things that plagues us still is veteran suicide and even those serving, taking their own lives. And I found as a leader that the more experienced I became, the more my instincts would tell me what question to ask. But you can ask just very basic questions and people will tell you whether they're connected or disconnected. For example, you ask a purpose question. Why did you join the Marine Corps, Cristin? That's a purpose question. And you have an answer to that question. Something that caused you to say, I'm going to step forward. Everyone else isn't, but I am. And there's a reason why I'm doing this. Sometimes it's family, sometimes it's a sense of obligation, sometimes it's because of what you saw happen in 9/11.
That was it.
For a lot of us, that's what a lot of people serve because of. That you don't get to do that to my country. Okay? You're not going to get away with that. I'm coming after you. I'm going to be with somebody else who's coming after you. It's not just me. You're going to get all of us.
Yes.
And so, different things inspire you to take that step forward. Ask a purpose question of someone. Hey, why are you here? Why are you working at the Gary Sinise Foundation? We get to do that all the time around here. There's other things people here could do. We've got an amazing, talented team here. It's just unbelievable. And everyone is filled with a passion. So they're answering a purpose question by being here. Start with that. And you can then begin to have a conversation with somebody that exposes if they feel like they have no purpose. Then a leader can help them find their purpose. Or if they find that they're not connected to somebody. I don't know what my purpose is, but I feel like I ought to be here, but I don't know who I can trust. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I don't know if I'm living the right way. I don't feel like I'm able to control this or that, which has a grip on me. Ask those kind of questions and then have a real conversation with them. Then you're leading.
The wisdom, that moment where it clicked, I'm like, it's illuminating. It's getting them to open. That is.
Carry a torch to them in the darkness, if you can. By the way, leaders have darkness too. You have to spend time in the mirror for that too.
That's what I loved how you explained. You have to look at yourself. You're looking at your darker parts too. You're not perfect. And so you have to go inward and see that. So, okay, I want to shift the conversation to Gary. How did and when did you two meet?
We first met in Chicago in 2006, I believe it was.
Okay.
So in that series of assignments I was telling you about where I was at the Pentagon, I was now the Chief of Public Affairs for the U.S. Army. And one of the entities we were working with at the time was the Union League Club of Chicago.
Okay.
All right. They were helping with a variety of things. And they invited me to come out because the Union League Club was going to host an event to help raise funds for the Pentagon Memorial, the 9/11 Memorial, which was right outside of my office window as Chief of Public Affairs. So my office was just adjacent to where the nose of the aircraft hit. I wasn't in the building when that happened, wasn't in that position. I was in Kosovo, as I mentioned. But after they rebuilt that E-ring, that office was reactivated. And literally just a few steps down the hall is where the chapel is from where the nose hit on that horrible day. Anyway, so we were trying to help with the raising of funds for that. I couldn't do fundraising. I was a government official, but I could come out and talk about things. Anyway, so Gary was also invited to come out, and he can help raise funds.
Oh, yes.
He does it really well. And he was going to speak as well at a luncheon. And so as we were both preparing kind of green room prep to go in and meet, or go in to speak, I get introduced to Gary Sinise. I already knew who he was, of course, and already admired him, admired his artistic work, and I also knew that he was doing things that were helping veterans. So I was honored to meet him. He came in wearing his little glasses at that point.
Yeah, the little Ray-Bans.
Smaller than his Harry Truman glasses. And of course, like anyone else, I said, "It's Lieutenant Dan."
If he had $1 for every time.
If he had $1 for that, we would really raise funds. And I was just teasing him a little bit.
Uh-huh.
I knew that he'd done other roles. He says, "You got to be kidding me. I've been a president. I've been a governor. I'm only going to get Lieutenant Dan." But as we were starting to chat, he says, "Did you go to West Point?" I said, "I did." "Did you know a guy named Mac Harris?" I said, "I did."
Oh.
I absolutely did. "Oh yeah, were you classmates with him?" I said, "No, he's a few years older than I am, but he was the tactical officer, the officer in charge of the company right next to mine." So there's 36 different companies. I was in the 36th of them. He was the tactical officer for the 35th. I saw him all the time.
No.
So I knew exactly who he was, and I knew the example that he set. And I shared that with Gary. I said, "Yeah, I absolutely know who he is." And I always admired him. He says, "He's my brother-in-law." I said, "You've got to be kidding me. You've
What are the
got to
odds?
be kidding
What
me."
a small world.
And so we had a connection from that moment on.
Yep.
A few months later, he came to the Pentagon, again, still helping to, in this case, he was actually raising the morale for the people at the Pentagon, who always need morale raising, and did a concert. So he brought the Lieutenant Dan band and came by my office. So we spent another hour or so together in my office at the Pentagon, and then he went out and did the concert. Then he came to my unit, the 1st Infantry Division, when we were in the States, not in Iraq. Did a concert. Came to me when I was a 3-star commander in Kuwait. This is when he's filming CSI New York. So when he talks about the fact that he would leave a CSI set, get on a plane with the band or meet the band in some other place in the world, do a concert, get back on the plane, and come back and continue his taping. I was a recipient of that specifically. Literally came out of CSI New York, got on a plane, flew to Kuwait. Okay, did a concert at 10 o'clock at night.
Oh my goodness.
Because it's just so bloody hot, and we had to do it at night. And then got on a plane a few hours later and went back to the States. So I saw him multiple times through the years, and we kept the relationship. We were pen pals, so back then he had Abe's pal email, and I was one of Abe's pals. And we carried on a conversation for years. So from 2006 up to 2018.
Wow.
So I'm now about to retire from the military. And Gary got word that I was about to retire, and he set the hook first. So before I was even out, my retirement ceremony was in December of 2018. In November, said, "Hey, I'd really like for you to come to join my board at the foundation." And I admired the foundation. I knew what the foundation was doing.
You're the recipient.
I was a recipient of it. I knew firsthand what Gary Sinise was doing himself, and then as the foundation was created, and saw the impact of that, and really admired it, and said, "How can I say no to this? This is purpose. This is meaning. This is the ability to give back to those that I serve with, the ones who may have gotten hurt during my time serving with them, their families, the ones that Carol visited at BAMC, at Brooke Army Medical Center, with her mother, going down and bringing blankets to them, or it was carrying on that kind of work. My wife, Carol, that's what I'm talking about. And then being able to still give back. And so I said yes. It was the first thing I said yes to in retirement. In early 19, I came out to the foundation in California, spent a little time with Gary, met Mac.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, met Mac out there during that trip. And Carol was with me on that trip. We went out there together. Met the team. I said, I think I want to do this. I'm going to say yes. And now here we are.
Did Mac give you a tour?
We had just had the tour. And so Mac came in later in the afternoon, and it was probably just a matter of weeks before he got diagnosed with chordoma, because that was in early 2019.
Yep. How is that journey? How has the journey been on the board of directors?
It's been fascinating.
Yeah.
Like any organization, especially nonprofits, we've had our ups and downs. So we had to climb some hills and enjoy the ride sometimes.
Yeah.
But the trajectory overall has been fascinating, and to see the foundation grow, relocate. Now here in Franklin, Tennessee, as we're doing this podcast, and to see the impact. And the fact that the demand doesn't stop. There's the need does not end. there's still people who need support, need help, whether it's a disaster that happens, fires, floods, earthquakes, any number of things that can happen to people unexpectedly, and the results of service. So first responders, family members, veterans, people who are still serving. When a helicopter crash happens, the Gary Sinise Foundation, we're not looking at headlines. We're looking for points of contact.
Perfectly.
It's very different,
Yeah.
you know? And so being part of that and to know on the board, the board doesn't have to prompt that. That's in the mindset of the people who work here. And the board then intervenes where needed to either reinforce something or say that, did we miss something, to keep it on track, to make sure we're being good stewards of the generosity that's given to the Gary Sinise Foundation. It's been fascinating. It really has. So I was also in charge of one other nonprofit, the Korea Defense Veterans Association, a fairly new organization as well. But at the present time, I'm an advisor to that, and the only one I'm really more deeply involved in is Gary Sinise Foundation.
It's in your blood. He gets
Gotta help.
He's your family.
He put the hook on me.
He did.
Gary's very persuasive to you. I mean, how do you say no to Gary Sinise? You just don't.
You don't. You don't. He finds a way. No, I love that. Can you give our listeners, and you touched on this, but an overview of our board and like how it supports and guides the work of the foundation?
Yeah. So we each come from different walks of life.
Yes.
We have different experiences. There are self-made individuals, there are business leaders, there are people with private airplanes, there are military generals, there are wounded veterans, there are legal experts, there are all sorts of players in this.
Oh, yeah.
Each one of us brings a different perspective, organized around the same passion, Gary's passion. It's Gary's passion.
Yep.
And it's an infectious passion. So all of us take that passion in and then try to find our ways to help as a collective group. We help to oversee the work of the management team here to make sure they have the latitude that they need or the restraints if necessary, to make sure they're budgeted properly, to decide where that largesse that flows into us from the generosity of people who just admire Gary Sinise and the work he's doing. When that flows in, where does it go? So helping to understand and oversee the programs of the foundation, looking for opportunities for outreach, helping to communicate what the foundation is. Each one of us goes out and represents it different things.
You are stewards, yep.
I was just down last week at Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas for an Invincible Spirit concert.
Yes.
I went the year before also and took my wife and my sister-in-law, Robin, and we had a great time down there just being amongst those who were the beneficiaries at that moment. And so each one of the directors goes out in his or her own way to try to help. I know a couple of our directors were at the Rosie's event last week. It's a privilege to be able to represent the foundation in whatever way we can.
As someone who's served and commanded thousands of soldiers and military of all over the world, how important is it to have someone like Gary and the Gary Sinise Foundation supporting them?
It's really important.
Yeah.
You don't live just by budgets approved or not yet approved by Congress. You know, that's the essence of what keeps the military going. But when you touch the heart of the military, you're talking about something else. That's not about funding. That's about a connection. That's about a sense of the people that we're serving even aware that we're serving them? Do they care? Do they care when I have hardship or my family is struggling with a school system or can't get credits when they got orders in the middle of the year and had to move because my orders came to me and I didn't want to leave my family separate from me? Do they care when I get hurt? Do they care when my emotions are damaged? When I have a moral injury? Or do they only care when they see me on parade? And so with Gary and other entities almost like Gary, because there's no one like Gary.
No.
But what these committed people do is bring the heart of those who are the beneficiaries of their service, of the service of our military, of our first responders. They bring a connection to them and say, it does matter. We do feel you. We see you. We love you. We support you. And we're going to help you. What do you need? And I've watched this happen, even in my own family. One of my family members had a catastrophic loss of her home and her family. And she and her 5 children at the time, and her husband, who's serving in the military, lost everything. And the Gary Sinise Foundation found out about that and provided help immediately. I know what it looks like personally because of that. And I also know what it looks like from a board perspective,
right.
To overlook it and see it. But I know the personal impact of this. When you go to a home dedication, or you do a Snowball Express or an Invincible Spirit or a Soaring Valor, one of these different programs which are reaching out to people from a particular dynamic, a group of veterans or a group of those who have lost a loved one, either in military service or in first responder service. Whatever gathering there happens to be, when you interact with them, you realize that they are feeling a sense of love and appreciation. And, candidly, Gary's got a magical touch also.
There is no one like him.
It's not scripted. No. Gary is 100% real when he comes in, is sharing just affection with somebody. When he reaches out and hugs somebody, and the burden that sheds off that person's shoulder when he touches them, it's unbelievable.
You can see it.
It's a gift, without doubt, and no doubt he's pursuing his gift here as he does this work, even in the face of some very difficult circumstances, like with Mac's loss. I want to get philosophical for just a second.
Please.
So I, from my spiritual perspective, I do believe there is a thing called spiritual warfare, and when you're doing the work that God wants you to do, you're going to get attacked.
Absolutely.
And Gary's been attacked.
Oh yeah.
So he needs the support, and that's one of the other reasons why I stay with him.
That got my soul right there. Yeah. People often ask, like, why could this happen to you? How could this happen to such a good person? But that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, he's under spiritual attack.
He is, yep.
Keep doing the good work.
That means you're on the right path, though.
That means you're doing the right thing. You're helping others.
Yep.
I think about all the exposures he had to parents who were standing over the bed of their son or daughter who were grievously wounded or suffering with some malady or some disease. And how many times he intervened. He came into the room as an angel. And in many ways, it's almost as though he was being prepared for it, for himself.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Mac would say that too. He shared that what he experienced on this mission of seeing our wounded and seeing how much they went through and how much they're still going through and each and every day. And it provided him this kind of awareness or this I don't even know what the word is, but in his own journey, it's like he could see them and then within see himself, essentially, and it kind of provided like a comfort or just this understanding, like he understood.
I didn't get to see Mac while he was ailing, but I did text message with him frequently, so we exchanged notes. I just sent him a note to try to lift his spirits and let him know he was being thought of and prayed for. That's an invincible spirit there. Right there it is. Absolutely. That's an invincible spirit. Mac was tough. As tough as they come. Absolutely. Him and his dad, yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you so much for sharing just so much wisdom. And your guidance and leadership is absolutely invaluable to all of us at the Gary Sinise Foundation. You are a deep, deep inspiration to us all. And as we do with every podcast episode, Mac will close out the show. Take it away, Mac.
You've been listening to GSF Podcast, the official podcast of the Gary Sinise Foundation. If you'd like to find out more about what the foundation is up to, or if you'd like to make a donation, please visit Garysinisefoundation.org. Make sure to tune in next time for more interviews, and thanks for joining us.